So, good afternoon, everyone. As I said, it's great to see so many of you here today for our event, Listen to Me, Sister, all based around this fantastic book. I don't know whether any of you or many of you have had a chance to look at it. There is a copy or a couple of copies out on the 3 copies on reception. Two. And obviously, some of you may have bought a raffle ticket, so good luck to anyone that has, because the prize is a copy of this fantastic book, which you will be hearing more about as we go along. So just a couple of housekeeping rules. Notices, sorry. Fire exit. We're not expecting the fire alarm to go off today. If it does go off, we're all going to head out this way, down the stairs, and it will take us out to the courtyard, which there's a car park, Marks and Spencer's, but just follow those of us that are readers because we know our way out. Toilets, there's accessible toilets and toilets, all toilets just over on the left as you come round the corner here. Okay, so we are going to be having a short break with tea, coffee, cake and savouries. Now, obviously, there is concern about hygiene. So we have got hand sanitizers. They'll be out on the food stations, drink stations. Please do use the hand sanitizers and please be responsible for yourself and others in terms of hygiene. And if you have any questions, then please come and speak to myself or Marianique, who will be hosting as well. We have also, as I said, raffle tickets for sale. So if you haven't bought a raffle ticket and you would like to, there will be an opportunity to buy a raffle ticket in the break. You may not have seen the work of Imani Grant, which is out, a display out in the reception. I'm just going to get Imani to come and speak to you for a minute to explain her work. So if you'd like to come, Imani, and explain.
Hello, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. So I'm Imani. I'm currently an A-level art student. I also do psychology and biology at Bristol Free School Sixth Form. So I brought some of my portfolio with me today. It ranges from art I did at some point during secondary school, GCSE and A-level, out just for display. Also, if anybody has any commissions or thinking of a gift for somebody. Yes. My contact details will be on the table. I've got some. I've got some business cards, with my number, and also I've got our Instagram and email, so that will all be displayed outside. Thank you.
That's exactly what we need, enterprising young people. And the reason we asked Imani to display her work was because it tied in very nicely with the theme of today. So, she will be one of our readers, so you'll be meeting her again. So just a little bit about this process. So we decided, Roz and myself, Marianique, we've been having discussions about this for some time, and what we did is we invited 10 women to come and take part in this process, which the result of which you will be witnessing today. And the idea was that everyone was given a copy of the book, so we sort of set up a mini book reading club, which, for all we know, we may continue because it's been a fantastic process. And we asked all the 10 women to have a look at the book and choose 3 pieces from the book, which was really quite challenging because the book is so rich. There's so much fantastic stories in the book. So we asked everyone to choose 3, and I know people were sort of tearing their hair out. It's like, I don't know which 3 I'm going to choose. And then after they chose 3, we then said, you need to whittle it down to 1, which was even more of a challenge. So we may have Daughters of Listen to Me, Sister 2 and 3 in the future with the other pieces that they didn't get a chance to read. So just a little bit about the background with the book. Now, Margaret Busby, who edited the book, she had decided that any royalties from the book would be used for a bursary for a black female student who was ordinarily resident in Africa, and that the royalties would hopefully, if they're trying to raise to £20,000 to pay for a student to come to University of London, SOAS, and that they could study there to do a master in African studies. So hopefully all the women that are in the book have actually waived their royalties so that money could support a black female from anywhere in Africa to study at SOAS, University of London. So just one final notice from me before we start. If you do have phones, can you either turn them off or put them on silent? We'd be really grateful, thank you. And then I'm going to pass over to Marianique. Thank you.
Good afternoon. It's so lovely to see so many of you, because with the time going on at the moment, we're really, really delighted to see you. So I will start straight away with our first reader, and I'm really delighted to welcome a friend I've known for so many years, done so many wonderful things, and is a curator of this event today, Ros Martin.
Thank you, Marianique, and good afternoon, everyone. I struggle to decide what to choose, and I'm actually reading something which isn't mine. I'm one of the contributors to this amazing anthology. My piece is by Angela Barry, Without Prejudice. Susan had a clear view of Claridge's foyer, its sweeping staircase, crystal chandelier, and ornate tubs of billowing white roses. Beneath the great doorway, she saw a young black girl. She seemed angry, bristling. She was looking straight at Susan, who touched her pearls and blinked her eyes. The roses faded. The livid face of the stranger was still staring at her. The girl strode towards her, high heels clicking on the tile, then muted by a plush carpet as she wove between the buzzing tables. "Hello, I'm Essie." The voice carried the South London vowels Susan hated. "And presumably you are..." By then, Susan had made her assessment. The distasteful accent was coupled with precise syntax. The girl was not quite what she'd expected. No ripped jeans, no visible tattoos or piercings, but despite Susan's discreet email warning her about appropriate attire, here she was, loud and conspicuous at Claridge's. Nothing refined about those primary colours, nothing subtle about the look on her face. But Susan was ready. With a studied smile, she got up and extended her hand to the first blood relative she had ever met, Susan. Her hand was left floating untouched in the space between them. "And you are?" The girl repeated, eyes flashing. "My Aunt Abina, my mother's sister, you know, the sister you treated like shit." Susan sat down, stunned by the immediate attack. She'd hoped the first half hour would be spent talking about university entrance and such, but no. She tried to focus on what? The skinny body, the blazing African scarf on or the tight coils of hair standing about the face. She settled on the girl's skin, black, gleaming and pulled, tight across sharp cheekbones, the way hers had been 30-odd years ago. She hated it then, and that thought steadied her. "Sit down, Essie. Please, don't make a scene." For the first time, Essie's armour seemed to slip. Her face was stamped with "bugger off," but her hands nervously pulled at a large manila envelope from her bag. She continued to stand immovable while deaf servers maneuvered around her. Finally, she ripped open the envelope, causing a few tea drinkers to glance at them. "My mother wanted you to have these. That's why I'm here." Still standing, Essie took out the first document and in a quiet hiss said her last will and testament.
Wow. You can completely immerse into it. Sit down.
I'm sort of shorter still, actually, which I brought from home.
Fabulous. Thank you. Before we start, I actually want to read a letter sent by the editor of the book, Margaret, to Roz. Because she would have liked to be with all of us today, and she couldn't, and she explains why here. So, dear Roz, how I wish it were possible to join you. If only I could clone myself. I wish I could do that too. For what is sure to be a very special event. However, I'm duty-bound to be in London on the 14th of March. The 14th of March is landmark birthday for Luke, her partner, with attendant family celebrations, as well as a day of commemorative plaque of being unveiled for Andrea Levy in Islington. So you all can give a little specific thought to Andrea, who passed last year. But you can be sure I will be with you in spirit and sending good vibes to Bristol. Thank you so much for the lovely photos and putting together Listen to Me, Sister. And I in terms of the photos and the design here, again, it's a lovely tribute to a friend of ours who has left Bristol, Gloria, what's her surname?
Sule.
Yeah. Please thanks each and every one of the beautiful sisters involved. And don't forget to take lots of pictures. And I know Crystal is going to be around taking some pictures so that we can send some. If you object to your photos being taken, please do let us know as well. Great. So this is my opportunity to actually have a little chat with Roz on the book itself. And choose this piece that you've just chosen, if I can start with that, actually.
I think she's an older woman, and what struck me as a woman getting older, with children who are growing up, one of whom's here, my son, Louis, is what we leave to them. And a lot of the work I do is around history and heritage. And, you know, there's something about, there's also the thought that if we're still journeying and trying to understand our past, and it's, and if we don't know it, in the actual story, she's 4, and when she's kind of adopted privately into a family up north in the Lake District. And, you know, she's obviously done well for herself. She's kind of choosing Claridge's. But when that, to actually be confronted by a younger version, to actually say, well, actually, this is your story. I don't know if anyone's interested in things like, what's that film where you look at your history? Who do you think you are? Oh, yeah. People always seem very happy, though, don't they? And excited to trace their relatives. But, you know, I kind of, in a previous life, I was a social worker. And you did occasionally meet people who weren't very happy and really didn't want to be traced or find out about their past. And certainly Susan is one of those. But to actually be confronted, it does get worse before it gets better. And then she gets to a place of healing. And I think that is a journey for many of us. And I suppose it's also quite unusual to have a younger person actually challenging an older person. I found myself in that situation when I went to Nigeria, which is the homeland of my late father, challenging a relative. It's not supposed to be like that. You're supposed to be very deferent, but, in terms of accuracy and memory, and I think it's a very powerful story, so that's why I chose it. What we're also going to be seeing a little bit of the bit that I have actually got in the book, Fanny Coco, who's the maidservant at Georgian House. And partly, again, it's a bigger story. It's actually tracing her own roots. And it's become a bigger project for me, in terms of it being Daughters of Igbo Women. So I think it's, it's about history, heritage, and healing through memory.
You gave me a very interesting fact earlier about Fanny Coco, which I didn't know about this church. You want to?
Oh, yes. She came to this church, Broadmead Baptist, 200 years ago, and was baptized here. So this is a really, really old church. Obviously, it's been added on to. And the church above the shops, I can't imagine what it looked like 200 years ago. But yes, she was a Broadmead Baptist who were at the forefront of the abolition. And she got all her family in St. Kitts to become Baptists as well. So that's a link with Fanny Coco. We will see the film subtitled during the break, actually. And it is online as well on YouTube. Yeah, being rendered visible in the Georgian House. And the reason why I felt it was important, because it kind of gives a history and a story, and I think for many of us it's important that we have a sense of what's gone on before and how we make links with our past to understand the present.
Thank you. Fantastic story. I think it would be read by one of the readers later. Can you also tell us, how did you get involved in this overall anthology?
I've known Margaret for some time, and she's always been quite generously interested in my work. So, just coming along to have something in London. And I met her at an event in London, and she said, "Have you got anything 1,000 words that can go into the anthology?" And at that time, I was actually working on drawing up Daughters of Igbo Women, which gives a much bigger story of the Fanny Coco story. And I think that the richness is about the transatlantic link. So I just sent it along. I didn't hear anything. And, the kind of next, it was part of the anthology. So it gives her some, which I think is quite right, really, some kind of a longer life and fitting into the landscapes, which I think with the anthology you have, it's divided, I don't know if anyone's seen it, there's kind of pre-19th century, and then there's 20th century, and all the writers in their decades. So we kind of got some younger writers right up to the 1990s. And it's quite interesting looking at themes, common themes that come up, or issues that kind of concern us, or kind of just poetry. It's very, very rich. And I think working with the other readers as well, I think quite often with anthologies they just sit on bookshelves. I certainly collect them and they just sit on my bookshelves. So I was recovering from a knee operation and kind of obviously I've spent time to read, and it just felt, I just started looking at anthologies again, and certainly each person's eyes is quite fresh, and I think reading is such a rich experience that enables us to enter worlds and understand the world, a little bit differently from other people's perspective. So I really thank every single, woman and young person, the youngest of us is 13, who shared the journey and opened up the anthology, because, exposing parts of it that I wasn't even aware that was in the book there's 200 writers. There's an absolutely lots and lots of stuff in there.
I remember when we were discussing the anthology, you were very adamant about having a range of women from different backgrounds really working together, and you took it as a big project of sisterhood. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about what's behind the whole project as well?
I think the women really can speak for themselves, but it's about just coming together and reading aloud extracts. And some of it is about just finding a voice, you know. I mean, some bits you could disagree with or might make you a bit angry, but I think for a lot of people it's just recognition, you know, whether it's kind of riding a tuk-tuk and, you know, just, I think some of the pieces that you hear, like the ode to my grandfather on the Somme, you know, the connection of our history and heritage is so rich. Having Saji and Nagina, again, has been, you know, powerful actually putting, you know, their own perspectives on the project and actually kind of choosing passages that resonate. I think for all of us as women, we do have a common experience, so how we choose to stories and extract that speaks to us is just part of the journey. And I hope it's been fulfilling. Has it?
Well, thank you so much, Rose. If you can put your hands together, really fantastic. Thank you. And we'll move on. You'll have the experience of hearing every single readers, and Rose will introduce the next one.
Okay, so our second reader is someone who I have sat in my car with for many a late night having long conversations about trying to put the world to rights. And this is, I'd like to introduce Patricia Anderson. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me properly? Yeah. So my poem is by Barbara Chase Rebold, who is a highly acclaimed U.S. Visual artist, sculptor, novelist, and poet. Amongst her numerous honors are the Carl Sandburg Prize for Poetry, the Women's Caucus for Arts Lifetime Award, and in 1996 she was awarded the French Order of Arts and Letters. She's an inspirational powerhouse. I was deeply moved by this beautiful and poignant tribute in honor of our unsung hero of color at the Somme. But if I may, I would like to extend the honor and the tribute to include all of our unsung heroes of color, both men and women, who have made significant contributions and sacrifices, not only at the Somme, but in other wars. So it's my great privilege to share her words with you today. Ode to my grandfather at the Somme, 1918, for James Edward Sanders, 1898 to 1966. He stands a solitary figure in dark brown and khaki along the Somme trenches, wearing the uniform of the Union dead on the foreign soil of the Western Front. Himself a foreigner in his own homeland, a ferocious volunteer in the 366 Infantry Regiment of the segregated all-Negro Volunteer Division, raised from the depths of the Black Philadelphia ghetto. A lonely steel-helmeted figure erect in a field of blood, having traversed the Atlantic in an American vessel, just like his great-grandfather before, except this time not in the ship's hold in iron chains, but chained nonetheless to America's destiny and the idea of patriotism in a useless war that freed no one, changed nothing, nor set any human goal, nor any value on human life, which will result only in engendering World War II, separating this war from the next war as the Great War, killer of an entire generation. The boy stands wondering, what is great about a war in which both sides are cannon fodder for the guns of the other, and white men fight for a hollowed-out hill? As a respectable excuse for 1 million dead, in awe, the French call the black soldiers men of bronze. Whilst generals tried out their new maiming machines and mustard gas made its way into war's hell. The boy carries a just-issued machine gun and a vacant-eyed, black-goggled canvas gas mask, no protection from the searing pain of the poison gas outlawed by the Geneva Convention. Mercenary bombs burst in countless numbers, blowing off arms and legs around his muteness, like scarlet oak leaves fluttering, spluttering on the rich brown French soil in a senseless, useless white man's war that has claimed 4 million dead on both sides. The boy stands in never-dry leggings, binding 26 days of mud and mold, dead skin that must be scraped off with the bayonet of his gun in order to stand at attention, resisting the fog of deadly gas, believing that the duty to die for one's country was his duty as a Negro and his right as a citizen, even as he was despised as being unfit to wear the uniform he wore or shed the blood he shed, for years afterwards coughing blood from burnt lungs. I remember the brown syrup on a lump of white sugar that kept his breathlessness at bay, his only medication, that and his veteran's pension and the right to a military burial, but not the right to march with the American troops down the Champs-Élysées in triumph among the flags and the confetti, a Yank like all the rest, revered by the French as the victors of the armistice and the savior of European peace and civilization. Safe for those same Europeans who had enslaved his great-grandfather, but never safe for him, neither along the Somme, nor in Paris, nor in Philadelphia, nor, for that matter, safe for democracy, the vote, the labor union, the working man. Returning home to my grandmother Lizzie, struck dumb with joy that it was over there, but not just beginning over here, and, all surprised, in 1966, to learn that our silent patriot was a hero who had the right to a military funeral with honors and the cannon salute he never received from the French, who had never revealed what had happened to him over there. For how can 1 million cadavers be conceived within 1 square kilometer? The folded flag rests in my arms, his faithful granddaughters, the last tribute to the last bronze man of the Somme.
Wow. Thank you, Patricia, and thank you. It was absolutely amazing. Our next reader is Imani Grant. So we had the pleasure of seeing Imani earlier. So welcome, Imani.
Hello again. So I'm reading a piece called Sunita, and it's by Chibundu Onuzo. So born in Nigeria, she moved to England when she was 14. She began writing her first novel, The Spider King's Daughter, 2012 at the age of 17, and it was published by Faber and Faber when she was 21. The novel won a Betty Trask Award and was shortlisted for the Dylan Thomas Prize and the Commonwealth Book Prize. After this, she won many more prizes as well for her work. Sunita. Delapo twirled the strand of premium Brazilian hair around her finger, round and round until the dark hair completely covered her nail. It was a tic for white girls. This constant fiddling with hair, flicking ponytails, running hands through locks, tucking strands behind ears, sweeping ringlets aside, tossing males back, seduction rippling in a million follicles. Annette's boyfriend had tried to run his hand through her afro once. His fingers remained painfully stuck at the roots, his nails snagged on a tight curl. Herbert would have been able to poke his pink fingers into her new tresses, rising until he reached the contraption of cornrows and thread that held it all together. It was a good weave. It was not stiff, proclaiming by its rigor that it was a helmet of synthetic fibers, immovable in the face of earthquake or hurricane. Her weave bounced, swayed, flew into her mouth at the slightest gust of wind. Her weave was smooth, silken, glossy, and buoyant, advert for Pantene, and yet she was dissatisfied with her new look. First there was the unnaturalness of it. Real human hair from somebody else's scalp now framed her face and rested on her clavicles. Then there was the cost of £300. There had been cheaper options, hair swept from the cutting floors of salons and stitched onto a double-wefted track. Mongrel hair, her auntie said, assembled from 100 different heads, coarse strands, smooth strands, blonde strands, red strands, grey strands, all dyed a uniform black that hid their imperfections. Get quality, her cousin said. You can reuse quality. Wear it, wash it, use it again. Wear it, wash it, use it again. There's nothing wrong with her new weave. John, a course mate in whom she had once harboured a vague interest, had said to her, "Love the new look, dollop? Very glamorous." "Actually, I'm calling myself Dolly now," she had wanted to reply, but he was gone. Striding away in his amber creamy shirt, body of a band lead, brains the consistency of hair gel. She had been christened Dollop by the girls in her Wiltshire boarding school, their slender Anglo-Saxon tongues unable to wrap themselves around the chunky syllables of Delapo. Dumpling Dollop, dimple dolent. She had been chubby back then, breathless at the sight of a lacrosse stick. She lost weight in the summer before university, sprinting on treadmill for an hour each day, living on nuts and red berries like a squirrel. She had lost 30 pounds in 2 months. She should have lost her nickname as well. "Don't tell me you introduce yourself to people as Dollop," her mentor Daisy had said in their first meeting. "That makes you sound like a blob of cream on the end of a spoon." No one can pronounce Delapo. And nobody can pronounce Adeasi. Doesn't mean I call myself dazed. I walk into a room confidently with my shoulders back and say, "Hi, my name is Adeasi. But you can call me Daisy. Now go on, come back and introduce yourself again." Delapo had been sent out of the room twice for introducing herself as Lapo and Olap. Finally, she had come up with Dolly. "Take a seat, Dolly," her mentor said. "Now we've given you a name, let's talk about your hair." Delapo loved the afro now hidden under her weave, loved its untamable, uncombable spool, loved the extra inches it added to her height, loved the mushroom silhouette of her head in photos, loved hair that grew up instead of down, gravity-defying, extraterrestrial hair. That's fine if you want to work in advertising or publishing, or media, or fashion, or maybe even engineering, but certainly not banking. Daisy said, "My friends like it. White friends or black? Does it really matter? White or black? Mostly white. They think it's funky, edgy, and cool, don't they? What's wrong with that?" She'd been paired with Daisy by Diversity Unlimited, a recruitment firm that helped companies fill up their ethnic minority quota. Daisy had worked for 7 years in the investment bank. Daisy carried a red leather bag with slim curved handles, discreet silver letters spelling out Prada under the zip. Daisy more structured dresses, thin black heels, milky pearls, minimal lipstick, dramatic eyeshadow, and cascading hair that swept below her shoulders. Daisy's hair cost The Lapis more modest purchase came in black cardboard box, edged with gold curlicue. The hair lay lustrous on a bed of crepe, folded into itself like a small, sleek creature, a sable or a mink. Her aunt had gone with her to the salon, leafing through magazines as they wove Delapo's afro into lines and then stitched the human hair to hers, tight running stitches that made her eyes water. She Skyped her parents in Nigeria once she got home. "Opo," her mother sang, her face large and happy on the screen. "Thank God you've finally gotten rid of that bush. Darling, come and see your eldest daughter." The tablet was passed to Delapo's father. "Dolla, dearest, you look beautiful. You always look beautiful. Afro, weave on, whatever. I'm so proud of you." He was the more emotional of the two, prone to bursts of affirmation, fed by his very diet of American motivational books. "You are what you eat, what you say, what you think," mantras he repeated like sutras. "Thanks, Dad. I'm going to bed now. This weave is giving me a headache." "Beauty is pain," her mother said in the background. So my reason for choosing to read that piece from the anthology is because I relate to Delapo's story. For secondary school, I went to Bristol Grammar School, which is predominantly Caucasian school. So I had my challenges when it came to hair. I'll come with the afro, braids, extensions, and I always get the questions, did your hair grow overnight? And when I did have my afro out, they would want to touch it, not necessarily without asking, etc. So I thought I related to Delapo in the sense that she's in an environment where she has to be, like, I have to be at school, she has to be at work. But she's not able to fully be herself, express herself through her hair. She has to sort of put on this mask, this actor's costume, to come into work every day. She can't just be herself. So my hope for people reading this and internalizing this is that you can be yourself. You know, whether you're at work, you're in school, you know, flying abroad, you can just, you can just embrace yourself and go to a workplace with your natural hair. It should be accepted. I hope there's a message through this.
Thank you. So we're now going to have a musical interlude with Claire Martin. So Claire is actually Rose's daughter-in-law, so thanks.
So this is a piece called Akinla, and it was written by Fela Sowande, who's a Nigerian composer and musician.
And our next reader is Sadia G. And it's been a pleasure to get to know Sadia through this process the last couple of months when we've been meeting. I just love your energy. And so let's welcome Sadia up to read. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you. The piece I've chosen is called We Should All Be Feminists by Chimamanda. While I was promoting the novel in Nigeria, a journalist, a nice, well-meaning man, told me he wanted to advise me. He told me people were saying my novel was feminist. And his advice to me, he was shaking his head sadly as he spoke, was that I should never call myself a feminist. Since feminists are women who are unhappy because they cannot find husbands. So I decided to call myself a happy feminist. Then an academic, a Nigerian woman, told me that feminism was not our culture. Feminism was un-African. That I was calling myself a feminist because I'd been influenced by Western books, which amused me because a lot of my early reading was decisively unfeminist. I must have read every Mill and Boon romance published before I was 16. And each time I would try to read those so-called classic feminist texts, I'd get bored and I'd struggle to finish them. Anyway, since feminism was un-African, I decided to call myself a happy African feminist. Then a friend told me that calling myself a feminist meant I hated men. So I decided I would now be a happy African feminist who does not hate men. And at some point, I was a happy African feminist who does not hate men, who likes to wear lip gloss and high heels for herself and not for men. Of course, a lot of this was tongue-in-cheek. But that word, feminist, is so heavy with negative baggage. You hate men, you hate bras, you don't have a sense of humor. Gender matters everywhere. And I would like today to ask that we begin to dream about and plan for a different world. A world of happier men and happier women who are truer to themselves. And this is how to start. We must raise our daughters differently. We must also raise our sons differently. We do a great disservice to boys in how we raise them. And then we do a much greater disservice to girls because we raise them to cater to the fragile egos of males. We teach girls to shrink themselves, to make themselves smaller. We say to girls, you can have ambition, but not too much. Aim to be successful, but not too successful, otherwise you would threaten the man. You will emasculate him. But what if we question the premise? Why should a woman's success be a threat to a man? What if we decide to simply dispose of that word, emasculation? Marriage can be a source of love and joy. But why do we teach girls to aspire to marriage and we don't teach boys the same? The language of marriage, often the language of ownership rather than the language of partnership. Both men and women say, I did it for peace in my marriage. When men say it, it's usually about something they should not be doing anyway. It's something they say fondly to their friends. Oh, my wife said I can't go to the clubs every night, so for now, for peace in my marriage, I only go on weekends. When women say, I did it for peace in my marriage, it's usually because they've given up a job, a goal, a dream. We teach females in relationships, compromise is what women do. We raise girls to see each other as competitors for the attention of men. We police girls. We praise girls for virginity, but we don't praise boys for virginity. We teach girls shame. Close your legs, cover yourself. We make them feel as though by being born a female, they are already guilty of something. So when girls grow up to be women, girls grow up to be women who silence themselves, who cannot say what they truly think, who have turned pretense into an art form. Gender is not an easy conversation. Both men and women are resistant to talking about gender and are quick to dismiss the problems. Some people ask, why feminist? Why not just say you're a believer in human rights? Because that would be dishonest. It would be to deny that the problem was specifically about being a female human. Some people will say, well, poor men have a hard time too. And they do. But class and gender are different. Poor men still have the privileges of being men. Some people say that a woman being subordinate to a man is our culture. But culture is constantly changing. Culture does not make people. People make culture. If it is true that the full humanity of women is not our culture, then we can and must make it our culture. My own definition of a feminist is a man or a woman who says, yes, there's a problem with gender as it is today, and we must fix it. We must do better. All of us. Men and women must do better. Thank you. So that great extract, it's in New Daughters of Africa, and I chose it for a number of reasons. One is I'm a teacher, so I do like to read a good essay, and that was a very good essay. And also, obviously, I thought it was befitting for today's International Women's Day celebration. But I also chose it because of personal resonance. I learned very quickly, growing up, that experiencing the world as a coloured woman can be very different to other women. Growing up, I didn't know any women in my community who were an example of professional career women who'd worked full-time from their early 20s into their 30s. And witnessing this trend was a barrier in itself. So I decided to become that person for my friends and family. And I noticed how we grew into many coloured women who were working full-time passionately for many years in very rewarding jobs. Chimamanda mentioned marriage in her essay. And the Quran describes marriage as an experience of peace and tranquility. However, I saw, growing up, many women in the Pakistani community staying in marriages full of animosity and bitterness, less due to financial reasons and children, but more so because of the "what will people say" phenomena. Ironically, what will other women say? So I decided not to be that person, and left a marriage where verbal patriarchal abuse was accepted as a male attribute. I'd heard things like, a man's anger and aggression is testament to him being a man. Whilst it's shocking, as a female you feel anger, you should always be calm and sacrificial. Avoid laughing and smiling in the presence of men. Pakistani girls are to be quiet. Never to show your opinion or be exuberant. When we choose to firstly notice, think, and then speak up against gender injustice in our homes, in our places of work, in matters of domestic roles, and even with regards to respect for one another, we make an instant positive difference for women everywhere. We not only become feminists by default, but as Chimamanda says, we make the full humanity of women our culture. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Stadia. Okay. Wow. So our next reader is my daughter, Christelle Pelliquet. She's not actually my daughter, but she's a little bit like my daughter. And Crystal will be accompanied by Claire as well.
Hello, thank you, Mother. So the piece I'm going to read today is called Mama, which is my mother, which is very fitting. And it's by Akosua Busia. And some of you might know her because she played Nettie in Color Purple, the film that was done quite popular. And she was also the screenwriter for Beloved, which was one of the books by Toni Morrison. And Akosua is actually also quite famous because she's the daughter of the former Prime Minister of Ghana and the former First Lady. So her father was Dr. Kofi Abwefa Busia, and her mother was Mrs. Na Morko Busia. So I've chosen this piece, first of all, because it's International Women's Day, and actually it's very similar it's very linked to the whole feminism and the role of women in society. But also I wanted to do a tribute to my own mother, who passed away when I was about 6, because this text really resonates. When I read it the first time, she came to my mind. But I also wanted to do a tribute to all the women, all the mother, any mother in the room today, because we're doing such a tremendous work. I have good memories of growing up in Africa, and even then, the women are, my mother was in the rice field, and then in the afternoon she would be on the market selling some craft and some of the rice. And then at the same time she has to keep her house, and then always having me strapped in her back. And many women in Africa still do that today. So they are doing an immense job and not always being recognized. And again, in our society, we're doing the same. We're trying to balance, work, our family, not even just one work. We're doing about 10 projects at the same time. So this is for all of you, and the piece is called Mama. She is the center of my hearth, the fire from which I warm my soul, the spark that kindled my heart. The sustenance I feed my daughter is a nourishment I sucked from her once succulent flesh, turned brittle bones held together by willpower. She called upon the force with which she once uprooted trees, replanting them in richer ground to revive them strong. With holes in her bones and nails like steel, painted blood red, she dig into tomorrow. From scorching hot tar, she carves a road for us to travel. Walk, she tells us, knowing she has prepared the way. Never too exhausted to water those you love, I am cultivated by your sweat. Drop by drop, you filled my core. I drank holy secrets from the umbilical cord from which you fed me. In heaven, I'll remember all mysteries and find you. You'll be my first knocking on the door. I will know your house by the exhilarating scent of clean washing hanging on the line. For like fragrance of frankincense and myrrh, clinging beneath your skin, freshness has followed you from country to country, house to house. I will know you, Mama. Grace be unto you, Mama. You are loved. I know you. From the beginning of time, you are love. Everlasting, I will know you forever.
Okay, so again, another round of applause to all the readers that have read so far. And what we didn't say at the beginning is for most of them, they've never done anything like this before. So it's been a really bold step, not just to read, but also to share their own stories within those readings. So we'd like to just really say what an honour and privilege it's been to work with you all, and just really feel that sisterhood for around the whole sense of International Women's Day. So it's been a great pleasure. And we're going to have a 20-minute break now. So there's tea, cake, samosas, pakoras, and raffle tickets. Thank you, Valerie. Raffle tickets. If you would like to, drinks are going to be served from this hatch over here. So please collect your drinks from here, and there'll be juice from the table where the cakes and the samosas are. So, and mingle and talk and share your own stories with each other. So thank you very much. So welcome back, everyone, and we are going to start straight away with Yoma Smith, another woman that I have spent many late nights sat in my car having a conversation with to try and put the world to rights. So welcome, Yoma.
Thank you. Dreaded mic. I was too late for sound check, but this seems all right. Hello. I am going to read extracts from a narrative written by Donu Kogbara. Donu is a Nigerian journalist and a communications consultant. She is one of the well-known and highly accomplished Nigerian women that I have admired for years. And being a communications consultant myself, that's an added bonus. Anyway, so she's someone I have admired for many years for her career in communications and activism, and for her presence and for her voice. Thank you. What a disaster! Are you recording? Can you edit that bit out? Anyway, sure. Anyway, so I was drawn to this particular narrative that I'm going to read because of the title. It's called Losing My Fragile Roots. Now, cultural heritage is important to me, and I often talk about roots. And although I sometimes have a transient interaction with my own roots, I do know that they are always there. They're dormant or they're active, they're always there, and I'm confident that they're there to anchor me, irrespective of my relationship with them. So I was concerned about why Donu's roots were fragile and why she was losing them. At the crack of dawn on the 30th of August 2015, I was shaken awake in my bedroom in Port Harcourt, a city in the troubled, oil-producing Niger Delta region of Nigeria's southern coast, by gun-tutting youths. I was frog-marched to a waiting jeep and driven to a quiet cove, from which I was transported in a speedboat to a fisherman's hut that was precariously balanced on stilts in a swampy mangrove islet. I was held prisoner for 13 days. Now, 3 years have elapsed since my sister paid a ransom to get me out of that dangerous mess. And I have so much to say about the actual terrifying yet fascinating experience of being incarcerated in the middle of nowhere with a bunch of loquacious kidnappers, some sane, essentially decent, some drug-addled and psychopathic. all who were happy to share their personal histories, their political views, their anger, their sadness, their anxieties, their dreams, their failures, and their rationale for turning to crime. It was all so weird, contradictory, complex, and ambiguous. There were interesting and amusing conversations. There was warm emotional bonding. There were numerous rape and murder threats. There were times when I was respectfully addressed as madam, and there were times when I was treated like the hated representative of a grasping, ridiculously pampered, and heartless elite that has abused the powers it inherited from the British colonialists in 1960 and has ignored, oppressed, cheated, impoverished, and killed the masses for decades. I was damned lucky to emerge alive and unraped, and no day passes when I don't clearly recall certain details of that ordeal. Alongside painful flashbacks, there are memories of camaraderie, great jokes and uproarious laughter, memories of touching acts of kindness, memories of feeling sorry for the brutalized boys who said they'd become outlaws because they were tired of being powerless victims. They called themselves soldiers. Soldiers who were waging a war against the upper echelons of society, and I admired them for fighting back. My friends have concluded that I am completely screwed up because, as one of them exasperately puts it, you sound as if you miss those evil gangsters and as if you were often happy in their bloody huts. And it is possible that I am indeed mad as a hatter and warped by this and suffering from Stockholm syndrome, a psychological phenomenon that makes captives illogically identify with their tormentors, sometimes to the point of vigorously defending them. I cried when I was told that my kidnappers had been caught and executed at the end of 2015. And I suppose that tears were an inappropriate response, given that they had hurt me and confessed to murdering, sexually assaulting, and torturing several abductees and law enforcement officials. You should be furious with those thugs and very relieved that they have been eliminated, said the pal who told me that they were dead. Nevertheless, the anguish they inflicted on me was only part of an immensely complicated story. And I prefer to think that I am not deluded, but simply capable of being forgiven and objective under pressure. But you know what? What happened inside that hut was far less devastating than what has happened subsequently. What has upset and destabilized me the most is the fact that I felt compelled after the kidnap drama to exile myself from my roots and family home in Port Harcourt. My parents bitterly regretted sending me and my 3 siblings to English schools because we became unrepentantly westernized Londoners, acquired very foreign partners, and flatly refused to move back to Nigeria. Then, aged 39 and inspired by various factors, I suddenly decided to give the whole land of my ancestors thing a go, which is how I wound up living in Port Harcourt. I am a member of the Ogoni tribe. Ogonis are domiciled in Rivers State. Port Harcourt is the capital of Rivers State, which is multi-ethnic, populated by minorities, and part of the Niger Delta. Rivers State is one of 36 states and produces a lot of the petroleum that has made the Federal Republic of Nigeria wealthier than most African countries. Now, I did my best to juggle and embrace the often conflicting, narrow ethnic, wider state, and even wider regional, national, and continental loyalties that all Nigerians are expected to juggle and embrace. And, despite being profoundly and unashamedly Eurocentric by nature, I was making serious progress and had mastered the challenge of figuring out why ethnic/tribal loyalty tends to be prioritized over wider loyalties, even by sophisticates who have genuine chums everywhere and were educated abroad and are citizens of the world. But when I was dragged out of my bedroom in the late summer of 2015, age 55, I had already done a decade and a half of struggling to meaningfully connect to my Ogoni, Port Harcourt, Rivers, Niger Delta, Nigerian, and African identities. But now I am too spooked to spend significant amounts of time in Ogoni land, Port Harcourt, River State, or any Niger Delta location. And this is a tragedy. I guess the worst thing the kidnappers did to me was to make me lose the ability to feel comfortable around my fragile roots and cast me back into the realm of people who don't fully belong anywhere. Thank you. As I said, roots are important to me, even though I have a transient relationship. And being a Nigerian myself, I have often most Nigerians do carry this whole sort of like tribal thing, language thing, citizen, country of origin, and so on and so forth. This whole journey, and so I totally see where Doni is coming from there, but also the experience she went through. I'm familiar with the fact that there have been a lot of kidnaps in Nigeria, and not necessarily high profile, which she is high profile, but what they're doing is sort of kidnapping sort of people who are affluent, not necessarily high profile because of the security. And so, it's because of the issue in the Niger Delta, the oil, the spillage, the ruin, the sort of the loss of wealth and community and society. So it's kind of, there's a lot going on there that part resonated with me, but also that I'm aware of, and it's kind of saddening, but we must be resilient and move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Yoma. Beautiful. Our next speaker is a wonderful Sulu Pasco. Had the pleasure of meeting her through all these meetings, and thank you.
Hello, everyone. Can everybody hear me? I'm reading extracts from the Bedford Women. It was a summer's day in 1968. I was a small child on a visit to London to see my sister, Daphne. Daphne was reading English at Bedford College, my mother had told me. Nice, I thought, because I couldn't imagine reading anything better. All the way there, I'd been looking forward to seeing my sister. All year, I'd been longing to see where she sat and walked and slept and read English. And I was not disappointed. Inside the hall of residence, my breath stopped and a true awe gripped my heart. A world of style and study. Daphne was 20. She'd gone to London to continue her education, ordinarily a simple personal venture. But Daphne, an African woman undergraduate, unwittingly or wittingly, was a figure in the social storm transforming university campuses in England, France, and the United States. Only a few black African women were students at English universities during that decade. Their scarcity was an old, deep pattern in higher education, a marked response to their gender and colour that had not yet found the global chorus to expose it. Another brave venture towards the close of that heady decade was the founding of the publishing house Allison and Busby. Margaret Busby from Ghana had read English at Bedford College and by 1968 was famous for being the first black woman to own a London publishing house. Margaret built a list of radical African and Caribbean writers, West Indian men such as C.L.R. James and Nigerian novelist Buchi Emecheta. The Bedford College archives record that a century before Margaret and Daphne completed their studies, their first black woman student enrolled there. In summer 1859, Sarah Parker Raymond wandered through the streets of Bloomsbury. An African-American woman walking across Bedford Square and into the liberal, non-sectarian College of Higher Education for Women, Bedford College. At Bedford, Sarah demonstrated her love of learning by registering for several courses. ancient history, mathematics, geography, French, Latin, elocution, and vocal music. And away from her studies, she socialized widely, making friends with English women whose hospitality and lack of prejudice she appreciated deeply. In 1859, she toured Britain, making speeches against slavery. Sarah found a genuine welcome at Bedford. She boarded with its founder, the philanthropist Jessa Reed. There was much for these two women to discuss, their lives being rich and full of purpose. Unsurprisingly, perhaps, both women signed the 1866 suffrage petition calling on the government to grant women right to vote. My sister Daphne was in her late 20s when she left London for East Africa. In Kenya and Egypt, she worked for developmental organisations and championed women's rights. Returning to England more than a decade later, she went into local government and in 2001 became the first black woman director of social services in the UK. By that time, at the start of the 21st century, Margaret Busby's ambitious collection of the words and writings by women of African origin and descent, Daughters of Africa, was almost 10 years old. Margaret and Daphne, two of Bedford's notable alumni, had turned reading English into something global, explosive, and urgent. The reason I chose this short story was because Bedford College and the women mentioned in this story, including the author, have had a great impact on my life in one way or another. Bedford College itself was a place where my mother, a white working-class young woman, gained a scholarship from Cornwall to go and read history at Bedford. Fast forward, and in the sixth form, I was encouraged by my English teacher, who had gone to Bedford College, to apply to go to Bedford College to read English. Like Delia, I was awed when I went for my interview for a place at Bedford. But in the end, I decided not to go there, and I decided to read social sciences and went into social work. But the black women, including Delia, the author, I read her Reconstructing Womanhood, Reconstructing Feminism, writings on black women, and it really went home to me that it was about the black British experience that were amongst the contributors to that volume. Margaret Busby, say no more. I bought a number of her Alison and Busby books when they came out, but the Daughters of Africa was really something else, because amongst those pages was a whole wealth of words of women of origin from Africa, but also women of African descent. Sarah Parker Raymond. In 2018, I was researching the role and involvement of black and Asian women in the British women's suffrage movement. And the only black woman I found was Sarah Parker Raymond, who, as I said in the story, signed that petition in 1866. And lastly, Daphne, who I didn't know was the sister of Delia. She was a role model for me as one of the first black managers and the first black female manager in social services. And I was involved in my work in running a program to encourage black managers in social services to go for senior posts. And Daphne was very supportive to me in organising this program. So that's why I chose this story.
All those connections, and we had no idea that Sulu had those connections until she came along and joined the group. So that's just a coincidence, but absolutely amazing. Our next reader is Nagina Mohammed. Again, I've met Nagina through this process. And Nagina's one of those people that when she walks into a room, you just feel her warmth. And so I'm really pleased to Nagina to read her piece to you. Thank you.
Yard Yassi, in her poignant novel Homegoing, probes deep with the question, whose voice was suppressed so that this voice may come forth? We all carry inside us the people who came before us. This anthology is such a huge achievement, serving as a time capsule of all the dissenting voices, past and present, who are now part of the canon of African literature. Books have a soul, and it's important that we bear this in mind when reading from hugely important texts like the anthology. I've always had the habit of allowing a book to nurture my soul by opening it to a random page, first expressing my intentions and asking it to speak to me in order to heal and inform me. It's how I've always read the Quran, and in my most turbulent year, one particular chapter, the chapter of Joseph, which is filled with the monumental message of hope, would fall open in my hands. And it's how my eldest came to be called Yusuf, the Quranic name for Joseph. And I always felt that God was telling me to be patient, that that name would be a light in my life, and that freedom would come. My shackles were the patriarchy I suffered under for 28 years, the stifling cultural norms I had to adhere to, having to be breadwinner for a family of 8. Shackles that cut me off physically, but never spiritually. So when I came to be the lucky owner of the huge legacy encapsulated in the New Daughters of Africa anthology, I made the very same intention and asked the ancestors to speak to me through it. And speak to me they did. My freedom was not gained in a day, a month, or a year. To achieve it, I had to overcome both sorrow and fear. I walked across continents and centuries, many times stumbling, falling down on my knees. I died 1,000,000 times for my freedom. Not a day passed when I wasn't grieving, but I never gave up. Never stopped believing that I would reach the destination called freedom. Sometimes I cried for my freedom. Other times I died for my freedom. My body and soul became my own queendom, the ground beneath my feet, never there long enough to call home. Constantly I ventured to uninviting pastures unknown. I died 1,000,000 times for my freedom. Sometimes I was taken, sometimes I was used, other times I was tortured and abused. My tears of sorrow deepened the sea, broadening the divide between freedom and me. Rebellion gave me hope and determination. My resistance knew no boundary or limitation. I bore the scars of my captivity like tribal marks of identity. I died 1,000,000 times for my freedom. Even though I was wearied by centuries of oppression, aged beyond my years by sadness and depression, weathered from exposure to extreme elements, frail from multiple abuses and resentments, I embraced my freedom like a long-lost friend and refused to release my grasp for fear it would end. I died 1,000,000 times for my freedom. I died 1,000,000 times for my freedom. I died 1,000,000 times for my freedom. Thank you. Having read this poem, the image of my shackles came to me, and the place where they had once resided ached. I resonated deeply with Fanny Coker's words in Ros Martin's evocative and penetrating piece that we saw earlier in the interim, being rendered visible in the Georgian House Museum, especially when she exclaims, "In this household, I am tragedy, I am a lie, I'm to be eternally grateful. I'm to say nothing, think nothing, feel nothing, but be nothing but answerable to endless whims." In such repressed conditions, the spiritually conscious often hear the voices or see apparitions of the past, spurring them onwards to be a witness to your own truths, to have faith in humanity. Just as the old sage releases his symbolic feather, remarking, "A symbol of our ability as humans is to rise above problems, pains, heartbreaks, illnesses, to travel to another world, to be reborn. To grow spiritually is our freedom." And from this, I hear Audre Lorde's distinct voice concluding for me, "I am not free while any woman is unfree, even when her shackles are very different from my own." Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Lovely. Really nice the way you've woven those stories together. Really nice. Thank you. Our last, it is the last. No, not the last, sorry. Our next presenter is our youngest presenter, youngest reader, Ria.
This piece resonated with me because it's about a tuk-tuk journey, and I've been on many similar tuk-tuk journeys in Colombo, Sri Lanka. The way it is written, you can feel every bump in the road and breathe in the thick, polluted, humid air. I identify with the writer's quest to find nostalgic food from her homeland. This is Tuk-Tuk Trail to Soya and the Stars. You venture into the dark, and it looms over and crowds your every space. Thick, even pushes into your earlobes like cotton wool. This hazy yellow darkness, choked with harmattan dust. You are boxed in by solid air, and you must breathe it in. You enter a tuk-tuk, the most rickety vehicle ever made, as if banged together from the spare parts of small cars, circa 1960 Austins, say, and old saucepans, panel beaten into shape, all loosely held by rusted nails and chains, and placed on top of what was once a three-wheeled motorbike, now an ungainly carriage with a snub metal nose. You sit on plastic, which is easy to wipe of dust, but clings to you like a kid to your sweaty thighs. All tuk-tuks are painted orange to compete with the river of dirty sand called the road. Haze, heat, rush, animal-like hoots and horns, orange to shock your eyes into seeing. Still, it provides the miracle every vehicle does, to move. All you have to do is sit, or rather grip desperately, as there is no side walls or doors. The breeze is a blessing. It strokes your cheek and whispers in your ear that you can breathe. It's okay, but not too deeply. No, your lungs cannot suck air out of dust as a fish do out of water. This dust that covers everything in a fine grey layer, gauze-like, sticky. You realize as you climb into the tuk-tuk that with cars you settle quickly, assured that the solid metal case will protect you from the rush of the busy street, the intense heat and light, the potholes underneath, the direct hit of any accident. For a while, driven from A to B, you have the pleasure of giving up responsibility, and you sink gratefully into the cushioned bowl of the back seat. Not in a tuk-tuk. You sit? Yes, but unsupported, holding tight to the rusty rail, sweaty fingers slipping as you are shaken from side to side like jelly. Shaken inside out, you are in a blender, a coffee grinder, an angry machine that jostles and jangles you. It sets your stomach churning, and everything in it is squeezed and kneaded. The tuk-tuk driver swerves to avoid potholes, the size and shape of dried ponds. His dark ball of a head bobs in front of you as he does the same desperate bouncing as you do. The tuk-tuk dance. It's not all dance. It's real danger, as each swerve, avoiding falling into a pothole, leads to a motorbike coming straight at you. It's as if the whole point of being on the road is to almost crash into the next car. A Okada bicycle, just missing by a thread's breadth to show off your skill, saying, "We're here, full-limbed, we ain't dead yet, okay? Here we go again." Respect is only for huge lumbering lorries, ancient blind dinosaurs that cannot swerve out of your way. So you slow down and slide to the side, a momentary bow of acknowledgement. You hiccup. Everything else rushes at you, even the dusty, smoking yellow night, a living thing, a sister to the street, which is not a straight line but a maze. Is it really lit by candlelight? Yes. And lamps, lanterns. Words that sound so medieval, but are very much here and now, gleaming, grinning, like a mouth with missing teeth. What gapes through the yellow-black gaps? What flashes past your dust-teared eyes? Endless shacks made from wooden planks and strips of corrugated iron slapped together, as ugly as a rubbish dump, that form a long, crooked line that hugs the crooked road. The kiosks are filled with the cheapest that Nigeria and China have to offer. Shiny nylon shirts, brightly colored packets of sunlight soap, curry powder, St. Louis cubed sugar. All the way from France, brand new bicycle wheels wrapped tightly around with white, black, and blue polythene strips and hung up on a pole in a pattern of open-mouthed O's. TVs and electric fans, dirty jars of chewing gum, and shelf upon shelf of brightly colored packages and boxes with sacks of grain below. To you, it's all jumbled up. But obviously there's some kind of order because it is repeated at every single kiosk, each guarded in front by a fire and frying pan where starchy snacks bubble and pop.
Thank you, Ria. It's great that we could have young people who are confident to get up and read. And we just need more young people like Ria. So as women and men in this room, we need to encourage young people to be the Rias of this world. Thank you. Another clap. Our final reader is Antoinette Clark, and I have to just really big up Antoinette's resilience because she had an accident not long after Christmas, and she turned up at 3 book reading sessions in crutches. We thought she was going to drop out, and Antoinette was definitely not going to drop out. She was determined. So, extra big round of applause for Antoinette. Thank you.
Yeah. The poem I shall read this evening is by a lady called Meta Davis Cumberbatch. She was born in Trinidad, and she studied medicine at the University of Bristol. Could you believe that? Afterwards, she went on to the Royal Academy of Music in London, and she was trained to be a concert pianist. Meta migrated to the Bahamas, where she spent most of her life. And she was known there as the Mother of Arts. She had many talents. She was a composer, a playwright, poetess, dramatist, dancer, and a cultural activist, opposing racism. In 1966, Queen Elizabeth II honored her with an MBE for all the works, the cultural work she had done in Bahamas. Meta died in 1978, but 36 years afterwards, in 2014, at the Bahamian Independence Celebration, she was honored as a Bahamian warrior for all the cultural works and arts that she did in Bahamas. So I shall now read one of her most celebrated poems, A Child of Nature, Negro of the Caribbean. Shackled? No shackles can bind me. Enslaved? I am free. I roam the fields, pick the flowers, spend with nature happy hours, bear my body to the sun, spread its rays, leap and run in sheer abandon, having fun. In little things, much joy I find. Nature to me is quite kind. The air, the sky, the land, the sea. Fruits in season are all there for me. The moon, it shines to bright my way. It bridges nighttime into day. With dancing feet and voice to sing, passing joys to me they bring. Much within my heart I learn, and many are the things I learn. I live, I love, I laugh, I sorrow. Each day brings with it tomorrow. I toil, I labor for my bread, for shelter for my weary head. Yet, lazing under a shady tree, I feel the world belongs to me. With mocking laugh and look of scorn, you seek to crush a child freeborn. You captive-vile, who would enslave me. You are shackled. I am free. Now, this poem resonates with me because as a child, I was marginalized and treated less favorably than my sister. But I didn't allow these negative experiences to shackle me. Instead, they were pivotal in developing my resilience and tenacity, which helped me to face adversities in life. I actually saw the bright things in life, and I appreciated and enjoyed the wonders of the natural world, which helped me to become whom I am today. Thank you.
Okay, we are just about to reach the end of our time together. So you said three things I want to do before we finish. One is to thank all the supporters, And I'll just need my glasses for this. First of all, Broadmead Baptist Church, Lindsay and Ken, for enabling us to use this venue and hosting us today. Lorna, Valerie, Subita, Pam, all these people have been helping us behind the scene and doing, refreshment and welcoming you here. Want to thank David, Louis, technical support, and also our sponsor, the University of Bristol, the Centre for Black Humanities. We've got here Ruth. And of course, yes, the pre-chorus were amazing. Thank you. Thank you. And Ella as well. Thank you. I mean, there's so many people to thank, so I've forgotten you. My apologies, really. And all our... Well, I've mentioned Ria already. I want to thank our amazing readers: Patricia, Imani, Sadia, Christelle, Yoma, Sulu, Nagina, Ria, Antoinette. Fantastic. I think they really gave you a good flavor of what the book is all about. So don't forget, you can purchase it. Still 2 copies here, I believe. And if we run out, you can get... Okay, these are for the raffle, so you can't have them unless you win. But you can get them from Waterstone, so so you can go and get a copy. But really do, in terms of the range of text that there is in it, really bring things alive in terms of poetry, short stories, non-fiction stories. Absolutely fantastic. Okay, talking about raffle, we're going to have a quick raffle now. And we'll end up with a wonderful piece of music by Claire Martin. I thought it was one of the youngest ones. Can I ask you to pull a number, please? Winning number is...
3.
Number 3. I'll get this. Can you pick a number for me?
12.
Number 12. Thank you. Number 12. Yeah. Woo. Thank you. So, if we can have a last bow from all the readers, and Roz, our wonderful curator tonight, and of course Ruth. Come along.
Yeah.
Oh, she's in there.
Can you smile? Oh, no, mine is full.
All right. So I'm going to just accompany this beautiful moment with 2 pieces, which were made famous by the beautiful singer Miriam Makeba. So.
Wonderful, Claire. Q.